Let's talk about the one decision that you need to make in your business that you haven't made yet. What is the decision that you've been thinking about and thinking about and thinking about, but you haven't pulled the trigger? You haven't decided one way or another. Well, that is the decision that could be your $1,000,000 decision. It could be the one thing that is holding you back from an extra $1,000,000 in your business. And a lot of business owners are doing this all the time. This is called decision debt. We're going to talk about this, and there's 3 reasons that owners go through this problem, and we're going to talk about what they are. I'm going to show you some examples, and then I'm going to give you a solution to solve that, because it is not that hard. But when you're in business, and like many of the businesses we work with, and sometimes 500,000, but usually $1 million to 10 million on average, it's a lonely business, and there's not a lot of people going through what you're going through. And who do you run some of these decisions by? You can't really ask, your team and your staff for everything. A lot of people don't have a consultant or a mentor to consult with. So what do you do? Well, what most people do is they just pause. They hit the pause button and they wait, and they're looking for the right time to make that one decision, or they put it off, or they cover their eyes and they're like, I don't even see it. I'm going to give you some examples so you can relate to it and find which of these 3 places are you, and how do you prevent it from happening so that you don't have to face this all the time, because it is a critical leadership aspect of your business. And if you're trying to scale to the next level, that from 6 to 7 or 7 to 8 or 8 to 9 or wherever you want to go in your business, you have to be able to make these kind of decisions. And with the speed of decisions going like this, with the invent of all these AI additions to business, you have to start making decisions quicker. And the choice that it comes down to is, do you pivot or do you polish? Pivot or polish, meaning, do you make a complete change now, or do you fix up what you have been doing? And this is what we're going to talk about today, because it is important to really understand that not making a decision is still a decision. And so we want you to figure out, how do I really make the right decision in my business at the right time and for the right reasons? So let's dive into this today. And as I said, I've got an extra freebie for you today. And if you want all of the slides and all of the extra resources, just go ahead and subscribe to our Substack, and we have all of that for you if you're a subscriber. So come over to theiconicedge.com and you can get that. And of course, you can subscribe down here on our YouTube channel or wherever you're watching, and then you will get updates every time we have a new series. So we're here on Iconic TV Live every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific. And so let's go ahead and figure out, what is this decision debt? What is it about? And it's the thing that is costing you. Sometimes you think, oh, if I make a decision, I may lose money. No. What really loses the money is not making the decision. And this is where a lot of people get it wrong. So you think about it. What are the reasons this happens? Why is this going on? Sometimes people say, well, I'm just thinking about it, right? I'm still thinking about it. I'm not sure if this is something we want to do. It could be about a new hire. It could be about a new location. It could be about integrating an AI workforce into your business. And, maybe, you just kind of want to see how the quarter goes. Let's see how this quarter goes, and then maybe we'll pull the trigger. And sometimes people say, well, I'm just not ready to commit yet. All right. So all of that indecision is like an invisible invoice. Like if you go to a bank and you take out a loan for your business, then you have an interest rate on top of that, right? And with this, the longer you're waiting, you have sort of an invisible debt, like an invoice that is adding up to your bill because you're not able to make that decision. So think about it for you right now. Where's the one place that you are not making a decision? It could be in your HR and your hiring or letting people go. It could be in your operations, trying to figure out who or when or how to do AI. Is it like, oh, we'll do it ourselves? Yeah, that's not a good thing, right? You can't run your business and run and learn AI all at the same time, right? Assign roles to everybody. So where is it for you? What's happening? Tell me, put it down below. What is the thing that you wish you could have just made the decision on? And now I want you to go back and look in your past. When did you delay on a decision and you could see the cost it had and you wish, I should have just followed my decisions, right? I should have just pulled the trigger and made a decision, pivoted on the way, right? But, the decisions can be big and sometimes they're little. Just a little pivot, a little polish. Sometimes it's a big decision. And so a lot of times it can be a little scary. But the dangerous myth of patience, right? You think you can wait. You think you can hold on a little bit longer. You think maybe you should hold on a little longer, but it really doesn't work, right? The assumption is, well, we could just watch and see what happens. We could watch what other people do. We could wait it out. We could, maybe it's even just having the funds to grow your business, right? So the assumption actually can become a liability for you. And if you haven't done something before and it is a new decision, like it's taking you to a new direction, that's one of the reasons and the places that people tend to hold back because they're like, well, I haven't done it before. I don't have proof. I need validation. Well, that's part of the risk of being a CEO, right? You need to know everything that happens. Then you're just going to be stuck in paralysis and the marketplace and your competitors will pass you by. So I'm going to talk about 3 examples here that you've heard of some, but let's really break it down to what happened here with these different companies and why they happened, right? We'll talk about the catalyst. What was the issue that was going on? What was the pathology and what's the autopsy? What happened in the end? Let's take the first company and we'll go in orders of timeline, right? Many of you remember Kodak. Maybe growing up, you had Kodak cameras, right? They had the camera, the film, they had everything. Well, I think back in 1975, they were the king of photography. And then a new technology was coming out. Kodak actually heard about digital photography. They knew it was coming. But you know what they did? They actually intentionally blocked it. Why? It was fear. And they thought, oh no, we can't do this. Our bread and butter is our current model, right? The camera, the film, everything comes to them. They own the whole market. They cornered the market. And if they split off even a little bit and go in this digital direction, they thought they would be cannibalizing their own profits. And so they completely stayed away from it. Right? So they refused to go into this new direction. And where's Kodak today? Nowhere, right? Maybe in a plastic wrapper in a Walmart aisle and get a little Kodak Polaroid camera type of thing. But it is not the behemoth that it was, right? And so they just stalled. They're like, no, we're not going to do it. We're afraid of this eating into what we already have, right? They're so hanging on tight to what they have that they were afraid to move on to what was next. So now you've heard many examples of Blockbuster. It is a classic that is taught in universities. And then, a couple guys with a mail out disc competitor called Netflix came along and they decided, why don't we go to Blockbuster and see if they will buy our company? And it wasn't a big ticket. It was $50 million. Do you know how many billions Netflix is worth today? So $50 million at that time was nothing to Blockbuster. Blockbuster, again, the behemoth, the leader, the number one in the field. And what did they do? They decided not to act. right? They had blindness. So I talked about the three ways, right? There's fear, which is what Kodak had. There's blindness, which is what Blockbuster had. Here's why Blockbuster didn't pull the trigger. Number one, they did think that they were the biggest and who's going to catch up with them, right? And this little mail delivery system. But they didn't take it on because they couldn't see that far out into the future. Blockbuster operated off of 90-day cycles. They could only make decisions on how their cash flow was going for the next quarter. And they didn't see going forward, having a long-term perspective, this is going to change everything. So that blindness kept them back. This is one of the big reasons why a lot of companies that are around today, you can look around left and right, and probably 2 out of 3 of them won't be around in the next 3-4 years because they didn't take advantage of what's going on with AI right now, because they're not redesigning the intelligence that their business is built on. Why? Because they don't have the vision. They're completely blind to the fact that something new is coming. It's a whole new landscape. And so that's the second category. And then the third category is Nokia. Nokia, again, behemoth company, used to be the number one phone, right? Everything was Nokia. And what did they do? They thought, oh, okay, now other companies are coming along, different software, different platform. Which system are we going to use? And then they had the option of using the Microsoft platform. Big company, right? Could have been a great partnership, but they also had their Symbian platform, and they couldn't make a decision. They had one foot on the dock and one foot in the boat, and they just never moved, right? You can't split that decision. You just basically are frozen in place. And that's really what happened to them. So we know the story. Look at your phone. It's probably not a Nokia right now. And if it is, it's probably something from years ago. So what did they do? They did the third thing, which is nothing. They thought, well, we'll do both. We'll try a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Well, it never works, right? Singularity was what we always talk about, right? And if you want to win a war, right? You've heard the concept, divide and conquer, because if you can split something up, then neither side is going to win. So that's the demise of Nokia. So all three of those are classic warning signs about what is still applicable to your business today. And the question is, if you look at these diagnostics, which one are you doing, right? Do you have the fear that's running you? Do you have the blindness? Or do you have indecision? You can't pick away. And sometimes that indecision is greed. I'll do it all. Doing it all just doesn't work. Always look at the biggest companies, and they are singularly focused on one thing. Okay, so which one is it for you? I hope these are, examples. Yeah, they're old examples, but they're classic examples. Why? Because they still happen every single day. We see it with clients. I'm going to give you a recent example as well. But the thing is, it's decision debt, right? I mean, look at what happened. Nokia went from 50% of the market all the way down to 3%. They just couldn't make a decision. And is that what's holding you back? A lot of times it is. And so when you're looking at it, you have to think about things in a different way. And this is what we're talking about here, is that if you look at this, it's all about what we like to call structural integrity. And what that means is, what is the little decision? Sometimes it's the hire that you didn't do. Sometimes you didn't make a price change. Sometimes you got a little too dependent on a vendor, right? And it's when we call it structural integrity, it's the same thing as in construction with steel. If you're building a big building, right? What happens is that the building doesn't fail because there was just finally one thing collapsed it. No, there's a lot of little pieces that were happening, right? For example, one thing that we see a lot is CEOs don't get rid of a virus in their organization, a cancer in their organization. It could be the sales manager, or it could be their number one rep. It could be a very nasty HR person, and you keep them there instead of maybe letting them go. And then what you find out is that a lot of people quit just because it's bad management, bad culture. Okay. So what are these little things? These are like the 1,000 slices that happen, right? And start cutting up and paring down your company. So it's not one thing, it's a lot of indecision that is happening. Little decisions you don't make, little blindnesses you turn your back on, and over time, the building collapses. All right. So what is the thing that you're not paying attention to? Recently in New York, there was a big thing with all of the, with a lot of the high rises, a lot of major companies are leaving New York. And now you have see-through sky high rises. And so there's an example of a company that was coming in to turn them all into condos and apartments. And they thought, oh, we'll just take these buildings, they weren't that tall, and then we'll add on 10, 20 floors on top of them, and then rent them out and sell them for apartments and condos in New York. And that should help, this whole housing thing. Well, what did they do? We're talking about structural integrity here in your business. Well, they didn't actually want to deal with all of the permits and laws and inspections. So they took advantage of just using their own. They hired their own crews. You know where the story is going, right? They hired their own inspectors and people to sign off on the building and the scaling. And then what happened? The construction crews came in and they started noticing on the high floors that they built that the beams were collapsing, the floors were caving in, the walls were crumbling. And thank goodness they didn't fill these buildings yet, and finally did an investigation, realized there wasn't real inspection. They made up the inspectors, right? These are the blindnesses that people have. Where are you turning a blind eye or creating something that you haven't made a true decision on? And so what do you make these decisions on? One of the things that's really successful is look at who does do companies right? Who are the people that actually know how to build big businesses soundly, quickly, successfully, and profitably? Who are the people that come to mind for you? So if we could take the richest person in the world, let's take Elon Musk. Forget what you think about him as a person. Look at what he does with his businesses. He's one of the most well-known business leaders as far as first principles thinking. And what does that mean? That means the way he makes decisions is very different than most people. And when he makes a decision, he goes all in on it. And he also looks at going in on it. How do we do it the fastest? But what do they do, right? He doesn't just add on what was history. Well, we've always done it this way. Let's also do this, like New York and these buildings. What he does is he looks at it from the ground up, from the base level, and starts with all new assumptions. That's really what has to happen. And so are you doing that in yours? Let me show you how it can look for you if you're trying to figure out, how do I think like that, right? I'll give you a story. Another company that was, I think this is a warning story for you, okay? So in this company, what was happening, it's a case study. This woman was making $500,000 a month. Company was not that old, about 2.5 years old, making $500,000 a month. She was a health and wellness company, and she was not a new entrepreneur. She had several businesses before. And so she built this up to $500,000. But the problem was she built it all around her everything had to go through her. All the delivery went through her. So she was the one delivering everything. In the beginning, she, like every new entrepreneur, she did everything. Then she started hiring a team and an assistant. And then she thought, oh, well, I have a goal. I want to hit, this many millions of dollars. And so she had the right strategy, right? We got the plan, the framework was right. But what happened was her delivery kept falling apart because she kept insisting that it relied on her. And one person can do that. You can do that up to maybe $100,000 a month. But when you got to $500,000 a month, it was taxing the system. It also taxed her system. She started to hate her business. And so what happened is all the clients that they were having were canceling and not paying. So rather than fix the problem and look at where is the problem in this, she just kept adding things on to the front end. And she just figured, well, we'll just add more salespeople and we'll make higher requirements. We'll pay them more to come in. They'll sell more. And so she loaded up the front, right? She got blinded by the $500,000 a month. But when you took it all out in the end with the cancellations, the non-pays, the higher costs for the front end, and the lack of delivery because she just didn't want to do it anymore. She wasn't even showing up on her own. The whole house collapsed. She ended up having to refund about $250,000 to people. Her name is trashed in the industry. And you know what? This is her fourth company. This is actually a pattern that she had. She loved to build a company around her, and it collapsed. So she was in love with having the company, but she didn't know how to lead it. She didn't know how to make the decisions that would make it a lasting legacy type company. So this is a big warning sign. We still see this today where people are so wrapped up at the core of their business that they just can't move forward. So this is the question. First principles thinking. Start from the floor. Start from the ground up. Stop all the assumptions that you have and okay, what's the base thing and what's next and what's next and what's next. If you want to learn how to look at your business from a first principles thinking, book a consultation with us. Book a 10-minute call. You can go to callconnie.com and we'll talk about where your business is. You can see how I analyze your business and think about it. And then that's maybe how you want to start thinking about your business as well. So it's a great way to actually clean the slate, especially when you're figuring out, what do I do? Is this the time when I need to pivot my business and go in a different direction? Or is this the time where I need to polish it and just fix some of those areas, like the woman with the $500,000 a month business? She could have polished the business, but she was unwilling to do it. She was unwilling to make the pivot she needed to get herself out of being the central core of the business. And this is what we call an owner dependency issue, because a lot of times people have their business and we say, what do you want to do? Do you want to keep it? Do you want to sell it? You want to pass it on as a legacy play? And if you do want to sell your business, do you know that 92% of them don't even ever sell? You just have to shutter it because it's not set up to sell. Why? Because the owner dependency index is so high. It's so dependent on you that if someone were to come in and buy it, especially as an absentee owner, they're not going to do it because that's not what they're trying to buy. So it's very important to figure out, is the decision that you're making the right one, the wrong one? Where is it costing you? Okay, so you can actually click there on the QR code or go to callconnie.com and we'll figure out, how do you actually scientifically, first principles thinking, make the right decision? It could be a little one. It could be a big one. It could be what vertical you want to expand into, or which part of your company maybe do you need to start letting go because that's not forward thinking and it's not growing in that direction. So, this is really kind of the choice that you have, is what side of the table are you on, right? Are you wondering, as far as the liabilities, what's that invisible invoice that you have? Do you have that fear up around your business, like maybe fear of cannibalizing it, like Kodak had? Maybe that 90-day earning trap, like Blockbuster had? And maybe you just keep hedging your commitments, like Nokia did, right? So a lot of people get caught up in the vanity metrics of revenue, and that's not it, right? It's often a cash flow issue for people. So if you're just thinking revenue, but you're not looking at everything else, you don't have all your assets set up. You might not have the required capital that you need. So you want to figure out, how do I actually define this? We say a prescription without a diagnosis is malpractice. And so we use a diagnostic tool to analyze your business. It's super cool, super easy for you. You can go to iconicbusinessadvisors.com/tips. Tips is the Iconic Profit software. And we developed this so that we can have a forensic look at your business and see, where are the gaps? Where are the holes? Where's the owner dependency that is blocking you from growing your business? And if you want to have a tips assessment on your business, it's really easy. And we can find out, how much profit are you leaving on the table, right? And you can take any of the quizzes that we have. You can go to our website, and at the top of our website, you will see quiz, and you can pick which one. Like, I feel like I'm the bottleneck. Everything is dependent on me. Or maybe my profit isn't there. Or maybe I can't decide which is the profitable side of the business that I want to go with. And we can figure out in 2 minutes to 4 minutes, you can take the quiz. You don't have to call or anything. Take the quiz and see what your numbers come back at. And then if you want to, then we can have a consultation and really dive deep into, what decision do you need to make next? Because right now is the time where you have to figure out, right? The old poem, two roads diverged in a yellow wood, right? Well, which golden road are you going to go down? Are you going to pivot, or are you going to polish? That's where you are. The number one thing you have to understand from this today is that you can't do nothing. You can't not decide. You can't get stuck in paralysis anymore. You have to actually make a decision for your business for the long term, not just the short term, but for the long term. And then you have to understand that if you're going to make a pivot decision, then once you pivot, do you know what you're pivoting into, right? And if you make a polished decision, how long can you keep polishing before it's time to pivot, right? You can never stand still. That's called entropy, and then you're going to go backwards. So if you really want to know, what do I do next, right? What is the process that I go through? What's this decision analysis, the tree that I need to go through? Go ahead and you can request this sheet, and you can see the steps that we take you through in order to decide what is the decision you make. Just go ahead and write decision down below. And of course, subscribe while you're down there. We'll get this form to you. And when you go to our newsletter, the Iconic Edge, then you can get that too. So this is the question for you today. What do you need to do? Number one, you need to make a decision. The question is, are you going to pivot? Are you going to polish? But you can't just hit pause. So come back here next Tuesday at 2 o'clock, and we will show you what that looks like. We have, for each of those decision makers, we have a quiz for each one. You can decide where you are. Are you in the state of fear? Are you in a state of blindness? Are you in a state of indecision? We have a quiz for each one, and I'll go over those next week. I'll show you exactly how you can look at your business, what questions you should be asking, and then what decision you should make. So go ahead, book your consultation, and then come back here next week at 2 p.m. Pacific, and go ahead and go take that quiz. Go to iconicbusinessadvisors.com/tips. It's 100% free. And if you want to know, what is this? How does it work? We have some videos on there that you can see exactly how it works. So we'll see you back here on Iconic TV Live next week. Have a great week and be iconic.